Good morning. So this is the third video in a series of videos I've been making about individual modules of the YouTube data tools. In the video description, there is a link to the YouTube data tools themselves, as well as to a playlist with the other videos I've been making so far, including an overview video that gives you like a general introduction to the YouTube data tools. In this video, I'm going to talk about the channel network, and I'm going to show you the parameters, the general rationale behind it, but also I'm going to show you how to open and analyze an output file that is being generated by this module. So the channel network module is a way to crawl channels. And that means it starts with a series of seeds and then looks at the connected channels to those seeds. Seeds can come from two sources. They can either come from a search query, so that's very similar to the channel list module, or, and this is what I think is used probably more often, from manually specified channels. In both cases, we end up with a series of channels, either that you've found elsewhere, maybe through another module or through the search query. And these channels are the seeds for a crawl into a network of connected channels. Connections come from two different sources, and I think the easiest way to explain these sources is by looking at YouTube itself. So this is the channel of a very famous Argentinian music producer, Bizarrap, and we can see here the channel front page, as always, here are the videos and so forth. But here we have a tab called Channels. And we can see there are two channels that have been featured by Bizarrap, Biscarita and Coscu. So this is basically one way that the YouTube data tools discover new channels. So by going through featured channels. In this case, there would be, if we would take Bizarrap as the seed, as the starting point, we would find two new channels that are connected to this one. And the network then would indeed have one connection from Bizarrap to Biscarita and one connection from Bizarrap to Coscu. Feature channels can be called in the interface different ways. So in this case, we have Canales Amigos, but this is basically up to the channel owner how they want to call this list of feature channels. Some channels also make their subscriptions available. So Biscarita, for example, if I go here to the channel and then click on channels, we can see, okay, there are also subscriptions here. There's actually one feature channel and then subscriptions. And that's quite a number of subscriptions. And if you use subscriptions in addition to feature channels, a network can get very large quite quickly, and it may be less, let's say, pertinent, less useful in terms of, kind of actually, opening up onto a Nectar network. So, a channel may be subscribed to all kinds of things. So take this into account when using this module. But I think we can basically use these channels here as a way to just try out the module and then see what happens. So I'm going to go back to Bizarrap, and I'm going to use Bizarrap basically as my seed for a crawl. In order to do that, I need the channel ID, and I've already shown you in the overview video how to get the channel ID. I'm taking here the URL, making sure that I don't copy the /channels at the end. Copying this, going to the YouTube data tools, going to the channel info module. Going to put the URL here, confirm that I'm not a robot, submit the query, and here I get the channel ID. So this is the channel ID of the Bizarrap channel. going back to the channel network, and I'm just gonna use this ID here as a seed. I could add more, by using, a comma separation, but in this case, I'm just gonna use this one seed. I'm going to take into account subscriptions, although as we've seen, Bizarrap doesn't make his subscriptions public, so it's not going to use it there, but we're going to use a crawl depth of 2. So it's going to look basically 2 steps into the network. It's going to take Bizarrap and then the 2 channels that we've seen are connected to it, and then it's also going to try and get the channels that are connected to those channels, right? And we've seen that one of them indeed has subscriptions. In general, whether this module works well or not really depends on the channels that you're looking at. So some channels don't feature other channels and they don't make their subscription publicly available. This really depends on the kind of the area, the culture that you're investigating. If there's nothing to crawl, if there are no connections, well, then the module can't crawl them. Okay, but let's run this. I'm still not a robot. Submitting this, yeah, and this is, it's going to take a little bit longer. And while it's running here, I just want to caution you in general, if you have a bunch of seeds or if you use a search query and then use crawl depth 2, you may end up with a very, very large network, and maybe many of the channels are not going to be useful for you. So particularly if you have a number of seeds already, you could use, for example, a staged crawling process where you say, okay, I'm actually just using crawl depth 1. I'm looking through the channels that I find. I'm only taking the ones that are interesting. I'm copying their channel IDs and I'm doing another crawl, right? So you're basically, it's also what's called sometimes supervised crawling. You're filtering at each step instead of going directly 2 steps into the network and ending up with a lot of stuff that is not really interesting. So it's finished here, and it has created one file. ChannelNet seeds 1 nodes 94. So on the whole, it found 94. Actually, it found 93 channels from this one seed, and I think most of that has really been created through the many subscriptions that the Biscarita channel has. I'm going to download this. Yeah, here it is. And now I'm going to open this in another piece of software called Gephi. So Gephi is a tool that is specialized on the analysis, visualization of networks. I've told you in the overview video that the YouTube data tools generally produce 2 kinds of outputs. One is spreadsheet style, and we can analyze that with stuff like Google Sheets, Excel, all kinds of data mining programs. And the other kind is network files. And while you can use other pieces of software, we almost always use Gephi because it's, I think, by far the easiest to use, and it's also like very, very powerful, and I think also a lot of fun to use. So I'm just gonna open the file that I've saved here on my desktop. It's probably, I have a lot of files here, but it's starting with ChannelNet. Oops. So I'm gonna open that, and you can see this is the import dialog that you get. And it asks you whether the graph type is directed or not. Directed means whether the links have a direction or not. In some networks, there is no direction, right? Because the connection is mutual. In this case, it is a directed network because just because Bizarrap features Biscarita doesn't mean that Biscarita subscribes or features Bizarrap, right? So it really is directed, and this is important because it really influences our analysis. It also changes some of the modules that we can use and the kind of analysis one can do. But okay, I'm just going to open that here, and here you go. You have a network. Well, this doesn't look very good, right? We don't see very many things here. So what I'm going to do now real quick is, well, I'm going to play around a little bit with this network and try and see what I can get from it. What's interesting, or maybe what's important, is that we can in general do, I would say, three main things with this network. We can color and change the size of the nodes. So this can really help us learn more about the individual nodes. So in this case, it's channels, and it could be, for example, interesting to look at to change the size of nodes depending on, for example, subscriber numbers or view count, right? This would very quickly allow us to see which channels are more successful than others. I'm just going to do that. So I'm clicking here on the left in this, appearance pane, and I'm going to go on ranking. I'm going to choose an attribute. You can see there's quite a bit of stuff. I'm going to select subscriber count. And well, it suggests min size 1, max size 4. That's pretty small. So I'm going to do 5 and 25. This is clearly as much an art as a science, right? So some of those visual elements, you can't say, this is the right size to do it, right? What you want to do is basically create a visualization that allows you to see something, and very often you may have to fiddle around quite a bit with it, and I think you're going to see me fiddling quite a bit as we go on. So I'm going to apply this. Oh, and I can already see, okay, so there are some channels that are clearly have more subscribers than others. I can also use the appearance pane to change the color of the nodes, and it works quite similarly. I could, for example, go to ranking here, and this is numerical attributes, and I could, for example, say, okay, let's look at the view count for color, and I really like this heat scale that goes from blue to yellow to red. And I could add that, and I mean, unsurprisingly, the channels with more subscribers, right, the bigger channels also have more views. I could also check other stuff, and particularly the petition pane here is interesting, because I could, for example, look at the country flags. Yeah, unsurprising, a lot of Argentinian channels here, right? I could also look at this is seed property, where I can see, which channels are seeds and which not. So I can already see here, there's only one seed, and this is the Bizarrap channel. So I found that. So that can be interesting. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I could use here. But I think we're gonna keep the country one. I think that's maybe interesting. Okay, so this is the appearance pane, and one can do a bit more here. You can also, change the color and size of the labels. But I generally find, if you put too much stuff in there, it becomes really quite unreadable. So the second pane I'm going to be looking at is the layout pane. So the layout pane basically is there to, change this pretty chaotic layout of this network into something that takes into account the particular structure of the connections in this network and tries to find a way of spatializing them so you can see, for example, communities emerge and things like that. In Gephi, there's a whole bunch of layout algorithms that you can use. The one that probably fits best for most applications is called Force Atlas 2. And I'm going to select that. And you can see it has a bunch of parameters that we can use. Some of them have more to do with like performance, because when you work with very big networks of maybe hundred thousands or even millions of nodes, things can take a long time, right? So that can be important. For us, it's not so important. I think the most important parameters for us here is scaling. You're going to see this is going to influence kind of the size or how far the nodes are spaced out. Then gravity, this allows us to see how we can make it a bit more compact, and playing around with scaling and gravity is very often an important part of this fiddling around process to kind of see, let's make it readable. And then very useful can also be the prevent overlap, which kind of introduces a little bit of spacing around each node. So these layout algorithms, it's not like they, you run them and then they stop. Those are generally optimization algorithms. So they can basically run indefinitely. And I'm just going to start this here, right? And you can see I keep it running, and it kind of continues to try and find a good position. But you can also see that the structure no longer really changes. I can modify this in real time. So I can, for example, click here now on prevent overlap, and you can already see, okay, now the nodes are no longer overlapping, and things are already becoming a little bit clearer. But you can also see that everything's still pretty meshed together. So I'm just gonna change the scaling here, and I'm just gonna go to 50. Oh, well, already looks quite good, and we can see a bit of structure emerging here. So you can see that this in the middle, I would suggest this is the Biscarita channel, because this is the one that had all of those subscriptions, and all of those channels seem to be connected to it. So this is really kind of the channel where it found a lot of new ones. But then we can also see a bit of structure emerge around here. There seem to be like two communities or clusters that are also connected between them. So we're going to look into that a little bit more. But this already looks quite well. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I still want it to be a bit bigger. Yes, I think now it's not so squashed. I can also add the names of the channels to this. I normally don't do that in the beginning because it introduces also a bit of noise. So yeah, that's what I mean by noise. Here, you can see this T here, the black one, allows you to add the labels. And then on the right, this slider allows you to make them smaller. And indeed, we can now see things a little bit better. Here we have the Bizarrap channel. That was our seed. Then we have indeed Biscarita here in the middle, the channel that had all of those subscriptions. And then, we have, I think, things that are all connected to, or, Latin American music down here. So this is already kind of interesting. So we could, for example, say, okay, we're using this structure as such to kind of, make some findings and, maybe think about, okay, this could be different companies or maybe different countries. It does seem that there's quite a bit of Argentinian in here, so there's not like a clear country cluster that emerges. But in your research context, this may be the case. But we could also use these channels here to actually say, well, this is how we constitute a collection or sample of channels. And then we actually don't want to analyze this network. We simply want to use these channels to download relevant videos, right? So in Gephi, you can go to, you have these three main views: overview, data laboratory, preview. Preview is basically to make things pretty, make it basically takes this thing and, you know, makes it better looking. So this is something you would do maybe at the very end. But in the middle here you have the data laboratory, and those are all of the nodes in this network, which, you know, can be interesting. We can also, you know, sort them by subscriber count, for example, here. But you can also see those are all of the video IDs here, oh sorry, channel IDs here on the left. So we could export this here as a table, and then, you know, kind of go through these channels and thereby create a collection or a sample of channels that we want to analyze, you know, based on some selection criteria. Okay, so to continue here with the, I've said there were three main panes that we want to use. So the first one was, you know, the appearance stuff, color, size. Second one was layout. Oh, and I'm actually gonna do something here to make the layout here even nicer. So everything I've done here comes from the Force Atlas layout algorithm. But there's also a nice, very small layout algorithm that simply adjusts the labels a little bit. And you're gonna see when I run it, it's just gonna space out the labels, you know, a tiny bit. And it makes everything more readable because there's less overlap between the labels. Appearance, layout, and here on the right, we have two things. And, you know, it may be that in your Gephi, you know, things are organized a little bit differently. You can actually, you know, drag those things around. And also, you know, if you close them, and that happens quite a bit, you can find them again here in the window list. I've seen people, they close the graph video and, sorry, the graph pane, and then, you know, can no longer find, oh, where's my graph? You can simply go back here and open that again. So here on the right, we can filter. So that could be quite interesting. For example, let's say, you know, we only want to look at the channels that have more than 1 million subscribers, or, you know, some other properties. But very interesting is also the statistics stuff. And I'm not going to go through all of this thing here. I'm just going to highlight one that I think could be quite interesting for analysis. And that's the modularity thing here. And you can see it's under community detection. So it can basically kind of detect groups, subgroups, clusters within this network. I'm just going to run this. I'm going to leave the parameters as is. Interesting, you know, it gives me some idea about how connected things are, and also, you know, gives me the link to the reference to the actual algorithm that is being analyzed for community detection. And what it also did is it added a new values here into my appearance pane, the modularity class. So it found basically 5 clusters, you know, and you can see, I'm gonna make it has basically detected these kind of subcommunities. So that could be an interesting way to see, okay, what's the structure of this network here, and start making findings. Obviously, this all takes, you know, much more time, and it has to be related to a research question. So this is not the point of this video. I just wanted to walk you real quick through the channel network module and show you how to get started with the Gephi analysis software. I'm gonna be showing Gephi more often in the videos discussing the other modules because they also generate network files. So we're gonna go a bit deeper into Gephi there as well. So make sure to also watch these videos as I upload them. Take care.